I don't often do game reviews, but I wanted to do one for this title because the the experience in this title is, to me, it seems rather unique for a tactical shooter, and I'll explain how. Uh, let's see. I'm not going to show you much footage about the game. You can go and watch that elsewhere, or you can buy the game and see it for yourself. Um, so far, there's no campaign in the game, no single player story, and then these operator missions, I don't know if that's supposed to be for special ops later on. That's also grayed out. So all you have to play really are these fire team missions, and that in let me see, I'm not sure if it's possible to do single player. I guess you could start with just yourself if you wanted to, but let's go to that screen again. So when you start up a lobby for fire team missions, you can first invite your friends to fill up some slots, and then if you have any lacking slots, and there's only 4, then you can click enter matchmaking, and then that'll bring in some randoms to fill out your team. So that works really well. I really like that. I had like 0 problems with it, and just seems to work great. Doesn't take long to get a game going. That's just awesome. No complaints. Let's see, I haven't done the training yet, so I can't speak on that. I haven't watched these videos. I forget what participate is about. Let me click on that. Oh, I guess it's like forums and stuff. And then there's your settings. Now, there's some settings like aim preference. Most of us seem to be of the opinion that you should set that to last selection, because either start scope or start sighted, it just seems to work better with last selection, because then whatever it is you set it at last, then if you go out of ADS and then back into ADS, it'll be back in that same position. So auto lean I still have turned on. I would like to try it using manual lean, because that's what I'm accustomed to, but I find then I play lots of games without even bothering to lean anymore. I just sidestep out, do my shooting, sidestep back in, which is maybe a bad habit, but I've just gotten out of the habit of using lean at all in games, and the auto lean seems to work pretty good, so I haven't had too many complaints about that. I did change the reload from hold, where you have to hold down R in order to reload, which is strange to me, to tap. So now I just tap R, and if I hold down R, it checks the ammo in the magazine, which I think makes more sense. Because R has always been reload in tactical shooters since I think Rainbow Six won. HUD visibility, I think we turn that to persistent because we just always want the compass to be up so we can give directions. Crosshair we've turned off because the crosshair doesn't really reflect where your bullets are going to go in some cases. Like if your weapon is at low ready and you press the fire button, that may not be where your bullets are going, so it can be misleading. Head bob, I just turned that off because, you know, it's head bob. So let me save these. Keyboard and mouse, I changed crouch to C because C has been crouch since like Rainbow Six, if I remember correctly. and then doing that I had to because this was left control, which trying to use my pinky with WASD keys is really awkward. I want my C right under my D key so that I can control it with my forefinger. That's where I want crouch. So now my left control is ping, and ping is like a way to put a marker at what you're pointing at. You like do a knife hand animation to point at something, and I guess it informs the other players of what you're pointing at. I see aim, right mouse button. Oh, I changed fire mode. I think it was Y, and I changed it to B because B has always been burst, or what I use to switch fire modes ever since Rainbow Six and Rogue Spear. Everything else has been pretty fine so far. Even the flashlight set on X works pretty well, because you'll be turning that on and off quite a bit. Yeah, so aim I have on hold, manual lean I have on hold, and everything else seemed to be good, just default. So graphics, this will depend on your system. I did the auto detect. I tried increasing my view distance to high. Auto detect says it needs to be most of my stuff needs to be medium, and that my anti-aliasing can be high. But I tried to turn view distance up to high, and when I did that I was getting more graphical anomalies. It did result in a more detailed environment, as far as I could tell, but that meant that some of that detail was popping in all the time, and it was pretty obvious, so I turned it back down to medium. Let's see. Brightness, I would not follow these directions. If you adjust the slider until this left guy is barely visible, it is going to be so dark inside some of those buildings, it's not funny. As it is, at 220, it's already just super murky dark, and even with tac lights on in some buildings, you can barely see anything but where your tac light is pointed at. I did notice, however, that when I turn view distance up higher, the detail of the light against surfaces using the tac light seemed to be more detailed, and very pleasant. So it would seem like I would need a better system or graphics card at this point, because I'm using a 1080 Ti, and this game seems to be a little demanding for it. But like I said, I did the auto detect, and it's very playable. Once you click auto detect, it sets your system where it should be, and it seems to work really well. Audio, I turn the music down as I do in many games. I use headphones. Radio panning I did with both ears. Tinnitus, I turn that on, though I don't recall experiencing it in the game. Yeah, let's see. Input mic. Oh, it should be that. Yeah, mic volume normal. Output mode. Headphones. Okay. I'll try that next time for the mic. It may be the same as default. I don't know. Oh, stereo mix, Realtek audio. Huh, wasn't there a default? There is a default. USB stereo mix default. anyway, I'll try the Sennheiser. So it's just a little cheap Sennheiser, but I didn't want to spend a fortune on something. And I didn't even check out language. So about the game itself. When a fellow trooper, or rather Marine, is wounded, you'll see them kneeling or crouching, possibly, or limping along. So you need to go up to them. It's a good idea if they crouch and get behind cover first. If they're incapacitated, they can still move to cover. To me, incapacitated means you're out and can't do anything. But in this game, incapacitated means you can still at least move very slowly. So make sure the person gets to cover, crouches, and then you can render them buddy aid. If enough players are completely out of the game, then once per fire team mission, you can go to the back of the LAV, the Armored Personnel Carrier, and you can bring reinforcements in. So it'll bring the same players back in, but as different Marines. So they'll have different weapons, usually with less accessories on them. Let's see. I think everyone agrees that the apartment building mission is the worst one, where there's a sniper minaret. And I don't mean worse as far as quality, but I mean as far as difficulty. So don't be surprised if the apartment building mission is difficult. I don't think I've completed that one yet. I think I've got like maybe 4 or 5 successful missions under my belt so far. And get accustomed to the fact that in this game you're going to get your butt kicked a lot. And what's different about this game is that it doesn't bother me that I'm getting my butt kicked, because this is truly a game where you are learning by losing, and you'll start to pick up on some of your bad habits, like separating yourself from the team. You do that and you're going to get picked off, and you might get some kills, sure, but more than likely you're going to get picked off eventually. And it's because the enemy insurgents, they're like rats. They move so fluidly because they're not wearing, I guess, much gear, and because they know the neighborhood better. They just move through the environment like rats, and they can get behind you by like climbing over walls, or maybe jumping down from a floor above. They shoot through little holes in the walls, little murder holes, and they're all around just very challenging. They'll pour automatic weapons fire through a doorway and until they cut you down. and even when you're doing a great job and you're taking them out left and right, they can still get you. And the AI feels very human. It doesn't feel like they're super robotic AI. They don't feel like aimbots. They feel like chaotic jihadist enemies, and who nevertheless do know the neighborhood and have planned for your arrival in many respects. And they're committed and they're zealous, and they're just there to give you a very bad day and show you that you're not welcome. So the different weapons that are available, there's an M16A4, I think, with an M203 grenade launcher. It might be an A2, I'm not sure. I didn't get a very close look at it. But I think it's an A4. And then another guy has like an M4 with an ACOG, and there's an M249 saw, and then another guy has a shotgun and an M4 as a backup, like a basic no accessories vanilla M4. The saw has a pistol as a backup, I think, and I'm not sure if the M16 A4 with the M203 has a backup, but the M203 might be its backup, I'm not sure. So I haven't played that class as much. So when you start out, you won't have any rank, probably, unless there's some deal that you can work out with somebody, I don't know. And it looks like after you get 3 successful missions, you get your first stripe. And then we think it's after 7 successful missions you get a rocker. So that's how you'll get your first couple of promotions, just by completing missions, fireteam missions. You can collect, you can disarm and collect, confiscate weapon caches along the way, but I'm not sure what the value of that is, what it's actually accomplishing. Someone thought it might lead to promotions, but then someone else said no, that's not true. They don't affect promotion at all, so I don't know. The sound environment is excellent. The proximity voice over IP is affected by the 3D audio environment, so it sounds like your gaming bros are right there in the building with you. Over distance, you have to use the radio channel by holding down the space bar to send your broadcast, your message. I'm not sure if there's a ballistic crack when you're being shot at. I think I heard it once, but I think most of the time I don't hear it. And that's something I would definitely like to see in the game more often for any weapon that fires rounds that break the sound barrier, which is most of them in this game. So that's something I would like to hear, but then at the same time I think they might be doing that because it might detract from some of the other sound effects that they've done such a great job on. And you'll hear what I'm talking about when you get in the game. There are some vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices, or VBIEDs, in the game in one of the missions, but they seem to be somewhat scripted. It's possible, I think, to destroy the vehicle with weapons fire, especially with the M203 and the saw, maybe. The other weapons, I'm not sure if you'll be able to put enough rounds into the vehicle and in the right place in order to detonate the VBID before it gets close to you. But in that mission, the VBIDs seem somewhat scripted. I would like to see more like modular destruction on those vehicles, like if I could shoot out the tires and affect their pathing so that maybe they might lose control and crash into a wall and then explode. Or if I could shoot the driver and then cause him to crash into a wall instead of drive straight towards me, that's something I would like to see, because the way it's done right now seems a little scripted. On my system, which as I've said is not as powerful as probably what's recommended for the game, I sometimes see bad guys standing on a roof, not moving, and then off in the distance, and then I'll shoot them, and then they won't even flinch. And it appears that I must be hitting a wall that is not being rendered in, that is in the intervening space. So that kind of bugs me a little bit, but it's not a game breaker. It's not something that would make me stop playing the game. Otherwise, the graphics are phenomenal. You're usually playing within one city block, but the city block is so detailed and so populated with insurgents that you don't feel like you're playing in a very, I don't want to say a very small space, but you don't feel like you're playing within one city block. In other words, the experience winds up being as satisfying as maybe a game with 200 players in Arma or something. It feels alive. It feels like you're it doesn't feel like you're being caged in during the mission, despite the fact that you are. So as I said, into that like one city block area. So friendly fire is very deadly, so you have to be careful with that. One thing that did happen to me too many times is that in tossing a grenade through a window, I seem to have the grenade bounce off of like something, it like a large hitbox or something. Like I had difficulty getting grenades to go through windows when they should have. So it seems to be much safer to toss one through a doorway. One time though, I was tossing one through a doorway at an angle, and the grenade wound up bouncing back into the hallway I was in, rather than bouncing at an angle into the room as it should have. Might that be due to hitting the door on the top of the grenade rather than the round part of the grenade? I don't know, but too many times I find the grenades in this game have difficulty going through openings of any kind, and they wind up coming back at you. And I may have not been the best marksman in the army, but I always seem to be pretty good with grenades. And in airsoft it was no different. I never fumble a frickin' grenade, because I was taught how to handle real grenades in the army. So when I'm experiencing this in a serious game like this, it kind of bugs me, because I would not screw up with a grenade like that, assuming I wasn't being shot at the same time, you know what I mean? So I would like to see some improvement there. Otherwise, I really have very little to criticize about this game. I could say, oh, well, there's only like 3 or 4 fire team missions to play, but the fact that the maps are procedurally generated, and it mixes up the cover and the routes that you have to take in the mission and how you approach the mission, it makes every map always feel kind of fresh. What may not feel fresh is the cutscene that plays before each fire mission, because it's always the same, except for the fact that it does show you some differences in the map. It kind of gives you a peek sometimes at the differences in the map so that you can get ready for it when you get into the game. But yeah, so even though there's only 3 or 4 fire missions, people do not seem to be getting bored of these missions because the map is mixed up so much from one playthrough to the next. And I think that's just phenomenal. You know, all studios should put replayability into their titles. And these guys have done an excellent job of that. I mean, think about it. If you've got only 4 multiplayer missions that last probably at most 20 minutes each, and people are running through these things over and over again and not getting tired of them, that's kind of an amazing achievement. And so it's just the cutscenes playing every time that gets a little tedious. However, the cutscenes are so short that by the time you're getting a little bit bugged by the repetition, you're already going into the game anyway. So it's not really that much of an issue. Let's see. It would be nice if the team leader could direct the positioning of the LAV to provide fire support. That would be kind of cool if they could do that. And although it might not be considered kosher according to military doctrine, I really would like the ability to pick up enemy weapons and use them. I think that would add a lot to the game. You know, and if it's not cool according to military SOP, well then it's not, but at least provide the player the ability to do that. Now if someone says, no way would a Marine ever pick up an enemy weapon and use it, would that really be the case when you're completely out of ammo? And maybe that should be the unlock. Maybe if a player is completely out of ammo, then they have the ability to pick up an enemy weapon. I don't know. But then at the same time, team members should be able to pass you more ammo to reduce the chances of arriving at that situation where those circumstances where you have no more ammo left. So, but I rarely find myself running out of ammo because you can get more ammo from the LAV, or you have a completely new loadout when you're brought in as a reinforcement, or you just don't survive the mission that long, you know. So it's not a situation you find yourself in that much. Let's see, what else? I find the weapons handle just fine. I don't have any complaints about that. I'm kind of interested in how mortars work, enemy mortars, because I'm not sure if it was at the very beginning of a mission or when we were brought in as reinforcements. As soon as we came down, I think it was when we were brought in as reinforcements, as soon as we came down the ramp, a mortar landed, must have been right near us or within us, and killed all of us. So all of the reinforcements that were just brought in were just wiped, and that was kind of funny. So I wonder if mortars work kind of the way they did in Call of Duty 1 demo on the PC, the public single player demo, where if you didn't listen to what you're being told in the mission during the story, then you would wind up, dying from artillery? Or is it a case where the mortars land is really random? In which case, I think that would be pretty cool. But the one thing that's strange is like the mortars are being fired like pretty danger close. Like the enemies are shooting them almost straight up in the air to bring them down like one building away, from where they are. So it's I don't know. That seems a little crazy. Something kind of resulting from the fact that you're playing on a somewhat small map of one city block. But anyway, overall, it's a very replayable, fun game, and it's a game where I don't seem to mind getting my rear end kicked a lot. And that's, I think, an achievement, that a game can make losing fun and educational. But like when I started playing the game, I said, is this some kind of anti-recruitment tool? Is this trying to convince young people to stay away from military service? Obviously, not everybody that joins the military is going to be sent into these kinds of circumstances. But on the other hand, it kind of makes me wonder if America's gearing up for something, because the last time a game like this came out, America was gearing up for something. And there's no doubt that this game, I think, is a valuable training tool. And I kind of wonder how much the training that young people get in these games benefits them when they get into the military. Obviously, they have to unlearn some things and relearn some other things, but at the same time, it's there have to be some skills acquired in these games that add value to a young person's preparation when they get into the military. Anyway, so my final thoughts on this game are definitely it gets a thumbs up, and it's probably going to get a lot of play from me. You can tell from my channel what other games I'm playing, and this one has found a spot in that list. I've been playing TAC shooters, or tactical first-person shooters, since Electronic Arts SEAL Team, which I wound up playing in the mid-90s. I think I played it, a few years after it came out, and then when Rainbow Six One came out, I was playing that, and Rogue Spear, the sequel, as soon as it came out. And ever since then, I've been playing first-person tactical shooters. Sometimes the market wanes and there are fewer tactical titles, and then sometimes the market's just flooded with lots of different titles. So there are titles that I have missed. I kind of get a feel for things just based on seeing videos of a game, and I kind of know what I'm what I might like and what I probably will not like. And this was a title where, watching the videos, I wasn't that sure, but then after the day of release and watching other people play, it looked like something I would want. And then I had a friend, or at least something I might want to buy, and I think I was still holding off, but then I had a friend that I've been playing tactical shooters multiplayer with since like 2006, I think, or 2005 or 2006. And anyway, he got it. He served as a Marine. I was Army, but he got it. He loved it and asked me if I was going to get it. So I got it, and we've just been loving it. And so I've made sure one of my Army buddies has it. And then a guy from work I know, he had seen video of it, and he heard I had it, wanted to get into it too. And so we've just been having a grand old time. And the players, initially it seemed like there might be some people who were like super serious in the game and might get like seriously annoyed if you friendly fired them, or if you failed them in some way. But then there seems to be a fresh influx of new players who all generally seem to be pretty sober-minded and pretty cool. So the community, the multiplayer community, seems to be good, and that might be due to the fact that it seems like co-op communities usually are better, a better experience than the PvP communities. So if this game ever gets PvP, you might see a different caliber of players in that aspect of the game. So, as I said, 6 Days in Fallujah gets a thumbs up. By the way, for those who didn't know, Fallujah was the location of a city or town, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure if this is the right way to pronounce it, but it was called Pumbedita. And it was a great seat of Jewish learning in, I think, Babylon, in probably maybe the first century, or the few centuries following that, maybe to the Middle Ages. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at it, but it was one of the big academic centers of Jewish learning in the world. So when we went into Fallujah, I kind of wondered how many of these insurgents were of some kind of Jewish descent or not. Not saying that they were actually Jewish, but that maybe many centuries ago, maybe they had an ancestor or something that was Jewish, and then of course Islam would have moved in, and then their behavior, ways of conducting themselves would have become different, because Judaism is not a jihadist culture. They had something, or they were alleged to have something called zealots, or sikarim, back in, which I think eventually became the word sicarios, but in the cartel maybe, but the sikarim were supposed to be like dagger men. I think the name came from the shape of their daggers. But my suspicion is that these zealots and sikarim were actually Roman false flag agents back in those days, who were doing things to make it look like the Jews were the bad guys so that they would have the justification to do what they would eventually do, which was invade Galilee and Judea and destroy the temple in Jerusalem. But anyway, Fallujah, though, is far to the east, way on the other side of Jordan, in Jordan being in between Israel and Iraq. So that's a separate story. But for those who have heard of the Talmud, which is like a Jewish library on with commentary and stories about different leading Jewish religious figures, and commentary on how to interpret this passage of the Bible or this commandment and so forth. Most people have heard of the Babylonian Talmud, this is probably close to the neighborhood where that would have originated. My guess, I'm just speculating, I'd have to look it up. But then there is also something called the Jerusalem Talmud. Some people call it the Palestinian Talmud. And while some of the content is the same in the Jerusalem Talmud, the Jerusalem Talmud does have content that is not found in the Babylonian Talmud. So when a person starts talking garbage about the Talmud, ask them the question, which Talmud, and see if they even know that there are two Talmuds. And if they don't, well, then they're an ignoramus, and you shouldn't pay much attention to their opinion. So, alright, thanks for listening.